right, welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Zain, the belt guy. We're gonna go ahead and get right into my guest here. It's an honor to have a guest with this much experience, knowledge, and time within the game, within the college ranks, within the NFL. Let's go ahead and bring him on. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna call him by his nickname here. Let's go ahead and bring on Mouse.
Yeah, that's me, Mouse. Yes.
Jim,
Yeah.
thank you so much for it. Jim Mouse McNally, thank you so much for being here, giving me the time. Let's just talk a little bit about who is Mouse and how did he get the name Mouse? Where does Mouse come from? Who
Well,
gave you that?
I would like to say it didn't have anything to do with football because being a football coach all my years, but I was probably 12 years old at the corner high school field, not the football field, but just a lot. And some older guys asked me, "Hey, you want to play? We're just playing touch football." And I said, "Oh, sure." And maybe there was 5-on-5, just throwing the ball around and playing touch football, etc. And I was probably pretty quick because I was littler than all the others. And that one guy said, "Look at the little mouse running around." And he lived at the end of my street, and I was 12 years old, and it stuck ever. I'll be 80 in December.
Yeah, I mean, God bless you. You're what, December 13th, right? Coming up very, very soon, 80th, God willing. So
Yeah.
Mouse has stuck with you, but so you started playing touch football. That led to you actually playing football. Is that correct? You were an O
Yes,
lineman.
we
Mouse was an
didn't.
O lineman?
Yes, we didn't have little league football when I was growing up. I grew up in what Tom Brokaw calls the greatest generation. So Tom Brokaw was a great book writer and a TV commentator and a reporter, etc. And so I was brought up in the 50s and the 60s where, you let the dogs run in the street, you drank out of the garden hose, your mom and dad didn't know where you were, you shared a telephone with the guy next door. It was just an unusual growing up situation that it's too bad that the kids nowadays weren't able to or aren't able to experience that. But the bottom line is we didn't have little league football or midget league football, and so our football was played down uh, at the corner lot, etc. So again, a guy named me, "Oh, look at a little mouse." And then somehow it came back to all my buddies and it followed me in high school. And then when I got married, my wife called me Mouse because she heard somebody else called me. And then every place I'd go, they wouldn't call me Mouse until they heard my wife say, "Hey, Mouse," blah, blah, blah. And they said, "Mouse? What is this mouse shit?" So, so anyway, yeah, it followed me. I mean, through high school, through college. I was 10 years at University of Buffalo as a teacher, player, coach. Then I was at Marshall, Boston College, Wake Forest, the Bengals, the Panthers, the Giants, the Bills. Then I went to the Saints and the Jets, and then back to the Bengals as a consultant. Every place I was Mouse.
So they know who you are. So here's my question: how do you end up coaching at Buffalo, right? Where does that transition take place for you?
Well,
How do you
well,
get into
well.
this world?
What happened is when I came out of high school, I was a decent high school football player. I wasn't a big guy. Well, back when I played, you didn't have to be that big, but I mean, I was 5'9", 205 pounds. Well, none of the bigger schools were interested in me, like Syracuse or Penn State, so forth. But I did have some other schools that were interested, but my grades weren't very good, like Miami of Ohio and Delaware, etc. They all wanted to send me to prep school. Even the West Point wanted to send me to a prep school. Uh, and our local college, where I'm from, Buffalo, I went to high school in Buffalo. The University of Buffalo was the best football, team that was kind of recruiting me. So I went to University of Buffalo, and uh, I went as a walk-on. And my grades weren't very good. In my freshman year, I had to go to like a night school to get eligible so I could be eligible for the varsity. I could play freshman football, but I couldn't be on the varsity unless I was in the regular college. So, bottom line is, I had to get my grades as a freshman. And then as a sophomore, I uh, was on the varsity. My coach for 4 years was Buddy Ryan, the Buddy Ryan, which
Interesting.
nobody knows except the people that interview me. And he kind of made me into a football player. I earned a scholarship. I lettered for 3 years. I started for 2 years. And then I ended up coaching for another 5 or 6 years. So I spent 10 years at the University of Buffalo. They're now in the Mid-American Conference. Uh, Back then, we were in the ECAC, which was like the smaller colleges of Penn State, Syracuse, uh, West Virginia was kind of the bigger schools in the ECAC. Buffalo was in a smaller division.
So now you're at University of Buffalo. How do you end up at the O line? So when did you start off like as a grad assistant and then
I,
work
I
your
it,
way?
what I was it took me 5 years to graduate, so I was a fifth year coach, okay, and I was actually coaching the freshman defensive backs, and then I was a graduate assistant for 2 years. 1 year I was helping with the defensive line, the next year with the offensive line. And the offensive line coach at Buffalo was the hardest working coach on the field. So I kind of took a liking to him, and he kind of mentored me, and I saw all his hard work. And, the O line is kind of complicated, all the different blocks and techniques and defenses. Of course, it's 100 times more complicated than it was back then. And I just kind of fell into coaching the offensive line. And then when he left, that assistant coach, the new head coach, kept me on as the line coach. So I stayed on 2 years as the full-time O-line coach at Buffalo until we dropped football in 1970.
Okay. So you're now in the O line. You're loving this world, right? You took a shining to it. You have your time at Buffalo. You move on to Marshall. How does that change come abroad? Come up, right? How do you make that maneuver? Does somebody come to you? Are you reaching
No,
in?
what happened is um, UB dropped football. We were right in the middle of the Vietnam protesting, and very liberal university, and the students didn't want to pay the student fees, which was like $25 a person. We had a lot of students, probably 20,000 or more back then. And so we dropped football. We just dropped it. Well, I had a wife that was pregnant, and they didn't fire us, but I knew they weren't going to keep us on forever. So there was a there was a few jobs were open. Well, one thing led to another. That Marshall had that plane crash, November 14th, 1970. They
Yep.
played East Carolina, and the plane coming back to Huntington uh, crashed. It hit the top of a mountain, flipped over. 75 were killed. Well, I was looking for a job. I had a few interviews, Bowling Green, Bucknell, etc. And I knew a guy that knew the head coach at Marshall, and they gave me an interview, and I was hired. So very, very dramatic deal. Uh,
Sure.
Being around the families of the fallen. Uh, there were 75 killed. I mean, our lead cheerleader, her mom and dad were killed. There was 5 doctors on the plane that were local fans, not just doctors for the team, but local fans. They were killed. The AD was killed. All coaches but 3 were killed. There was probably 50 players killed because 20 or so were on the freshman team that were not eligible. So when we started over again, we had to start with the freshman team and anybody that we recruited.
What was that like trying to rebuild that program? Because now you're a part of the rebuild of that program, right? That happened in 70. You're there 71 forward. What was that like?
It was eerie because you would meet some of the parents of the players that were killed would come back to games because we played right away. And some of the wives of the coaches, I met the wife of the old line coach, and she came and she hugged me and cried. And uh, I mean, it, I mean, it was an eerie feeling. I mean, probably no different than if you're a war veteran and you're at a ceremony for the fallen, or you're at 9/11, and that brings you back to the Giants. On 9/11, a similar situation. After 9/11, we hosted the families of the fallen firemen, policemen, at our Saturday practice. So just being around those the kids of the policemen and the firemen that were killed, and the wives, and the hugging and the crying, it was similar to that at Marshall. It was it was
Very
it
hard
was
to imagine what that atmosphere probably was like, not only during that time, but through the course for Marshall's healing, right? It's very different
well,
from
yes, I mean,
9/11, just that long.
we had track guys come out for football, basketball players. In fact, a basketball player made the team. He was a pretty good split end. An interesting story is on that Marshall thing. There's a movie out called We Are Marshall. Everybody
Now,
listening
have
that's
you ever
been,
seen it? Have you seen the movie?
I have seen the movie many times.
Now,
Well,
what is
many
your thought on the movie?
many people, uh, when they do watch the movie, okay, one of the stars in the movie, he's someone else played him, but the story is really about one of the assistant coaches. Name was Red Dawson. The point is that he was a coach on the staff that was not killed. And he flew to the game in East Carolina, and a few other coaches drove because they stopped the night before to go to some high school games on the way from Huntington, West Virginia to Greenville, North Carolina, because Marshall played East Carolina. So I think there was two coaches. I think there was like four coaches that drove two cars to the football game, but they stopped the night before because they were scouting some high school kids on the way. Well, this Red Dawson, okay, he flew on the plane. Coming home, he gave his seat to the oldest coach. Probably the guy was 60 years old. He was our kicking coach. I forget his name because I wasn't there yet. And he drove a car back and was not killed. So he stayed on the coaching staff for 2 years, and then the grief was so strong for him that he could not continue coaching with us. And the whole story, if you watch We Are Marshall, is about William Red Dawson. And so that's kind of something that, maybe people that are listening or watch can concentrate on, about Red.
Sure.
And because he recruited a whole bunch of the players. And of course, he knew all the coaches as he was one of the coaches. But yes, so that's how I got to Marshall, because Buffalo dropped football and Marshall needed football coaches. And but the interesting thing is we played the next year. You would think that if there was that many people killed, 75, November 14th, that we started spring practice probably in March. So it was November, December, January, February. 4 months went by and we continued to play football.
That's got to be quite a toll mentally. Can't really imagine what that atmosphere and place was like. So you spent 4 years. Sorry, was it 4? 3 years, 3 or 4
Four
years.
years,
4 years
four
at
years,
Marshall. You had stops.
71, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, so then you had to stop at BC and Wake Forest. What were those programs like? You had about
Well, the coach at Marshall, after 4 years, we won some games, but not many. The first year we won 2 games. The most we ever won was 4, and it took such a toll on the head coach that he just retired. I mean, he went on to be an athletic director at many places. He's very famous in the athletic director role. His name is Jack Langle. But in Matthew McConaughey played him in the movie We Are Marshall. But by the same token, when he retired at Marshall, I was looking for a job because the new head coach brought in his own people. So I knew some people up east because when I was at Buffalo, we had beaten Boston College. And the coach at Boston College was looking for a line coach, and I had a few coaches recommend me. So I was hired at Boston College. Well, what that was a big move up for me because Marshall, having lost all those players and building, and they actually got thrown out of the Mid-American Conference for recruiting violations before we got there. But, we were playing some pretty good teams, mostly a Mid-American Conference schedule. But going up to BC when we played Penn State or we played Texas or we played Texas A&M and we played Syracuse, etc., was a big move. So it was, I was around great players. I mean, we must have had 10, 12 offensive linemen that played in the NFL. One of our greatest O-linemen played 12, 13 years with the Chargers. His name was Donnie Masick. He was a center. And then we have a number of other guys that played 3, 4, 5 years. They were like Boston College was the place to go if you wanted to be on the offensive line. Now, we didn't have all the skilled athletes that Penn State had or that Pitt had, but we had as good an offensive line as most of those big schools in the East. That was 75, 6, and 7.
One can argue that one of the Giants' best O linemen was Chris Snee, who came from
Snead, yes, and he was
Boston College as
the
well.
son-in-law of Coughlin, but I had left before then. So yes, we did have a bunch of good offensive linemen at Boston College, and so after 4 years at BC, the head coach was not fired. His name is Joe Ukika. He's deceased. He actually got an offer from Dartmouth, and he got probably twice as much pay. So whatever was going on at Boston College, they didn't pay a whole lot. But at Dartmouth, the Ivy League, they gave him a hell of a raise. So he went to Dartmouth. He took me up there. I went on a recruiting trip with him. He wanted me to come with him. I said, no, coach. I said, I've made it this far to BC. And then I had a connection. The guy's name was Mike Working. He was a good friend of mine. He coached at West Virginia. Bottom line, he ended up being the coordinator of Wake Forest. The head coach was John Makovic, who then became the head coach at the Kansas City Chiefs, the University of Illinois, University of Texas, University of Arizona. So I went from Boston College to Wake Forest, which was even a move up from Boston College because it was in the ACC. And the only issue we only had 2,000 students. Can you imagine playing big time football with just a few students? Had nothing to do with recruiting, of course. And then my second year at Wake Forest, listen to this. We beat Auburn. We beat Georgia. We beat Virginia Tech. We beat North Carolina. And we went to a bowl game against LSU. It was Charlie McClendon's last game. It was in a bowl called the Tangerine Bowl, which I think now is the Citrus Bowl. We lost the game. But anyway, I had 2 great years at Wake Forest. And I coached. Who's your guard? It's Billy Yard. Yes, I did. Yes, I coached Billy Yard for 2 years. We moved him from a defensive lineman to an offensive guard, and him and I are very close. So he's one of about 5 that we had at Wake Forest that ended up playing in the NFL from Wake Forest.
You've got plenty of Giants connections. Billy Art, obviously a New Jersey native as well. Super Bowl winner. I think he was drafted in '81.
We have another one, Baldinger. He didn't play long with the
You
Giants.
coach Baldy?
Richard Balding. There's about 3 Baldingers, but
Gotcha.
this was Richard.
Gotcha.
And he also played with the Chiefs. and maybe a few other teams.
Okay. So
So
yeah,
there's three of them. But yeah, it's not the one that's on TV. It's not the
sure,
TV guys.
sure,
It,
sure.
it's perhaps their younger brother. But yes, yes. So I did have two players that played for the Giants, and again, Billy and Ard and I are very close. I made this local Western New York Hall of Fame. He came with another Wake Forest guy to come and honor me, and we're still very close to date today. And he was just a great kid. He was smart as hell. He's a stockbroker now, I think, but he was on those great Giants teams with Parcells.
So now here comes the big jump, right? You've done the assistant thing, you've done the college thing, Cincinnati Bengals. How does that bridge and jump happen now from the college ranks to the pros? And was that always a desire or just an opportunity that happened?
No, it was not necessarily a desire. the The thing was that it's a long story, but I don't like long stories. The head coach of the Toronto Argonauts in the Canadian League was Forrest Gregg, the greatest player that ever played for Vince Lombardi. How do I know that? Because I read a plaque in his office. Forrest Gregg is the greatest player I ever coached, Vince Lombardi. Now he had all those old timers that were great players, Bart Starr and Horning and Nitschke, etc. But anyway, uh, so I'm coaching at Wake Forest, and we have a lot of scouts that come, and then eventually one of the scouts that scouted our team ended up being an assistant coach for Forrest Gregg in Toronto, the Canadian League. Well, Forrest previously was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And if you'll go back in history, which is good for your fans, Paul Brown, the master of football, the GOAT, the guru, who invented half the things going on nowadays, was fired by Art Modell. Forrest Gregg was also the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. He was fired by by Art Modell. So Paul Brown is in retirement. Forrest Gregg is at the Toronto Argonauts. Forrest Gregg, I think, goes to the Grey Cup and they win the championship. Then Paul Brown starts the Bengals. New team. He's the owner, the president. He's the coach. He's the first coach of the Bengals, Paul Brown. So after 3 or 4 years, they fire. He had Bill Walsh with him, but then he had another coordinator there as who was appointed head coach. So after Paul Brown, the head coach was Bill Johnson for a while. I know I'm giving you too many names, but the guy's name was Homer Rice. So Paul Brown's the owner, general manager. His head coach is Homer Rice. He fires Homer Rice and he hires Forrest Gregg. In between Forrest Gregg and Paul Brown, I think they got together and they said, you know what? We're going to kick the shit out of the Cleveland Browns and Art Modell. That's a true story. I mean, I didn't hear the exact words, but both fired by Modell, both coming together to coach or to own and coach the Cincinnati Bengals. They had something to prove by beating the Browns.
Sure. So you're there from 1980 to 94. I mean, that's a tenure right there, right? You're there for
15.
15 years.
Yes.
15 years. In that 15 years, you saw a lot, obviously. You went to a couple bowls, right? Anthony Munoz, Hall of Famer, right, is on record by saying that he attributes his success to Jim Mouse McNally. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with those players. Tell me what goes into being an O-line coach. What does it actually take?
Well, it takes a lot of enthusiasm. It takes uh, that the players appreciate that you're trying to help them rather than coach them poorly or that you're trying to be a good coach, or you are a good coach, or you're motivating them, or they like your spirit, they like your hard work, they like the information you give out to them, that whole thing. Uh, and and that may have been better than whoever I followed. But Anthony wasn't there then because we both came in as rookies. He was a rookie player, I was a rookie coach, and I was always looking to get better, going to clinics, talking to other pro coaches, going to other pro camps, if allowed, and sharing ideas with other, because the game was much more complicated than college, as it is. Well, now the college game is complicated, and so is the pro game, because the passing game is kind of taken over with all the protections and the blitzes. It's become uh, a modern science, actually. But anyway, so I got better and better and better. Each year I got better. I learned a little more. I studied more film. So Anthony and I were together when he was a freshman, or I mean a rookie, right up through when he retired, which is he retired after 13 years. I was there 15. So we got very close. We're very close, very close.
And
And if you Google who's the greatest offensive lineman that ever played, his name will come in first.
it sure does. His name definitely shows up first. And like I said, he attributes to you. So that says a lot about you because everywhere you have been, coach, success is right there. I find it hard to believe that that would be
Well, when I
coincidental.
was with the Panthers.
Now we're gonna get into that, right?
Oh,
So
yeah, okay. Yeah, I forgot.
you had that 15 years. Why does that come to an end?
Okay, it
How does
came to an
Carolina come
end.
around?
It came to an end because early in the Bengals' career, they were a family organization, not a big organization. They weren't a rich organization like somebody that owned a car dealership or owned a bunch of steel mills, or whatever you want to call it. So in the early 90s, there was something called Plan B, and we didn't really get that involved in it, and we didn't have that many good players. We had Boomer, and he led us to a Super Bowl, and then he went on to the Jets. Uh, I don't remember whether he was getting old or whether he got a better deal with the Jets, but anyway, we didn't have a very good quarterback at the time for a 3 or 4 period from 90 to 93. And the whole fans were saying, the Bengals suck, Mike Brown sucks. And football was my love. And I'm getting all this negative feedback from the community, not so much directed at me, but directed at our whole program. And it was discouraging. It was uh, it was not fun. And I was not fired. And I went into Mike Brown and I said, Mike, my contract was up, so he didn't hold me, or maybe I had another year and he let me go. And I said, the Carolina Panthers have recruited me and would like for me to come, and I'd like to go. And he let me go. And
So
so
quick,
that's when I was really hired by Bill Polian.
right? Quick side question before we get to the Panthers. Chris Collinsworth. I don't
Yes,
know if you watch him that much. Obviously, he's on NBC,
yes.
and you were obviously there. He came in, I think, a year after you, right? You were 80. He came in as 81 as a rookie,
Oh, yeah. I
right?
was there with Chris for
Yeah.
9 years or so.
If you listen to and watch Chris on TV versus how you know him up close and personal, how much is that professional? How much is that him? Like, how much do you see the same person you remember?
That's him. But knowing him as a person, he was a little more of a comedian. You know what I mean? Like, he liked to have fun and, joke around, but he was always into the football. You know what I mean? He was serious minded. Yes, that was him. But, when you're alone with him, there's a little more levity about him than
Or
seriousness.
of
But he
course,
was, yes, he was always a studier, and he knew his assignments, and he was an outstanding player for us. He was tall, and he had good speed, and he caught a lot of balls for us.
So now the Panthers, brand new franchise, expansion team, um, coming around. Let's rattle off a couple of names that were with you in 1995, right? You have this guy named Kerry Collins, who happens to be there. You have this guy named Frank Reich, who's active today as a coach. Your head coach at the time, I believe, Dom Capers was the first coach. Your assistant coaches are still kind of going. Vic Fangio, still
Yeah,
going. You're going up against Vic Fangio. Greg Roman, still going. I mean,
yeah.
you coached with guys who are literally still going today. How does that make you feel? Because you were probably at a different place when they were at their part of careers, and then again, there's coaches, offense, defense, all of that. How does that make you feel seeing these guys kind of still going at their craft?
Well, you know, a bunch of them were my age. A guy named Joe Pendry, who was our offensive coordinator, was good. I think he still works with Alabama and Nick Saban as a consultant. Uh, Denny Marson was our, no, I'm sorry, he was with the Giants. But I'm trying to think of all the guys that we had at the Panther. Fangio, but he was a little bit younger than I. Capers, I think he was close to my age. I mean, he's got to be in his 70s. I don't know how old he is, but
The
uh,
assistant coaches were Dan Brew. Am I saying his name right?
Dan,
Don Brew. Sorry,
no, Don Bro, B
Bro.
R
Sorry,
E A U X.
BUX. Yeah,
He
Don Bro.
he he was one of Joe Gibbs' top assistants when Joe Gibbs had that good staff. But he's my age and he's retired. He lives in Carolina,
You had
and
Blair Bush. Blair
Blair
Bush.
Bush was like my assistant, but he was younger than I. He played for me at the Bengals. I don't think he's still coaching.
Yeah, you had
Um,
George Katavolis.
George Katavolis.
Katavolis.
George is probably close to my age, and he had coached with the Colts. And then I believe he's retired, but yes, he was a good secondary coach. I think he is retired. Don Bro's retired. Joe Pendry basically is retired. Those other guys you mentioned were younger. Greg Roman was just like a quality control guy. A guy named John Shoup was quality control guy, but Roman was very smart, and then he moved up in the ranks. Uh, the key about us at the Panthers was that our general manager was Bill Polian, who might be one of the greatest general managers of all time. He took the Bills to 4 Super Bowls, I believe, and he got fired there by Ralph Wilson. They had a disagreement over something, but anyway, so he went to the Panthers as the GM. Well, he wanted to hire Dom Capers, who coached for the Steelers, but the Steelers were going to go to the Super Bowl, so he couldn't talk to Capers until after the Super Bowl. So he called me and hired me before he hired Capers, but with the approval of Capers.
Sure.
So it was the Bill Polian. So how did I know Polian? Because the Bengals would play the Bills a lot, and he knew of me. And I'm from Buffalo, and Bill is coached at Buffalo, and his kids all went to high school in Buffalo. So it was kind of a Buffalo
Little
connection with
networking
myself and
connection.
Polian.
So
Yes.
I have to ask the question. Kerry Collins Panthers, Kerry Collins Giants. How
Yeah.
were you involved in that patchwork? Were you
No,
in somebody's
I was
ear? How
not.
did that happen?
I was not. It was a surprise to me when they said, who we just got at quarterback. But what happened at the Panthers, for whatever happened after the second year or so, Kerry Collins, I think he just quit. I mean, I mean, I think he just had enough of it, and he whatever, and then he survived a few years later with the Giants. So I don't know what he did in the period when he was out of football. You can kind of Google that he went to the well, he went to the Panthers in '95.
Mhm.
So my first year with the Giants was '99, but Kent Graham was our quarterback. So
Yep.
I think in 2000 it was Collins. So from probably uh, whatever that year was, uh, 96 to 2000. I don't know where Terry Collins was. I think he was with the Saints.
Yep, he was with the Saints in '98 for 1 year. Between '98 and '99, in between the Saints and Giants, don't know what he was doing. He just
No, he was
played
just out
football.
there. He
Yep.
was he was just out there. But the interesting thing about the Panthers, we must have brought 8 to 10 guys from the Bills because they had gone to 4 Super Bowls. So we had a guy named Carlton Bailey. We had Frank Reich. We had Don Beebe. Uh, and we had some other people who played. The tight end was from the Bills, a big, tall guy. And he was a pretty good player. And I'll tell you what, in our second year, there wasn't a better defense in football. How we accumulated these players, I don't know, other than each NFL team had to put out a number of guys that would be acceptable for us to take. I mean, when you have an expansion team, they put them out. But man, they put some good players out. Now, I don't know if that was because they were overpaid and they couldn't afford them, but man, our defense, we'd get 6, 7 sacks a game. I mean, our defensive ends were Lamar Latham and Kevin Green. I
Yeah.
mean, they were a sack master. We had Mike Fox from the Giants, and he was damn good. We had a great nose guard from Denver. His name was Greg Cragen.
Yep.
We had one of the best linebackers in the history of football. Okay, Sam Mills. Okay, so in fact, they've got a statue of him. So we accumulated a bunch of players, and that's why the second year at the Panthers, we went to the championship game,
Yep.
which is unbelievable, really. That a
12,
brand new,
12, 12 and 4. Second year, 12 and 4.
yeah, absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. Uh, the first year we won like 4 games, and our first victory, I think, was against the Jets. But we had to play our first season at Clemson because they had not built the Carolina football stadium. And we trained at a college in Spartanburg called Winthrop College. So we trained and we played at a not our home site. But when the stadium was built, it was really impressive because I was not used to a brand new big time facility.
Sure. So the tenure in Carolina comes in, and for Capers goes about 4 years. New head coach comes in, assuming there was a sweep of staff usually, right? A new guy comes
Well,
in,
what happened was
known,
that
or how did that go?
Dom Capers was a good coach, and then his fourth year, we didn't have a good record for a year or two, but it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. We didn't lose every game, but it wasn't good. So the owner fired him, and they brought in George Seifert, who didn't do anything. And so then, after the Carolina Panthers, that's when I went to the Giants.
How did that Giants relationship
Well,
happen?
at Giants relation, they fired their line coach, who's still coaching now and is a good coach, John Matsko, and myself and another coach named Tony Wise, who doesn't coach anymore, were looking for a job. He was at either Miami or the Cowboys, and Jim Fossil interviewed me and another guy, and he offered me the job.
Okay, did you know Fossil before?
I never knew him, ever met him.
So give us a little bit on Fossil. You got to give us some
Okay,
stories.
Fossil was the coach at Utah. He was a quarterback at Southern Cal, but then he either, he was either not playing or he didn't have the grades. But for some reason, he finished at a junior college. I think maybe Fullerton Junior. No, I think he started at Fullerton. Then I think he went to SC, and I think he finished at San Diego State or some other school, wherever he finished. But he was a California guy, He loved the Beach Boys. I mean, he was California. I'm from
Through and through.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, through and through. Outdoorsman, etc. But he was a lot of fun. He took care of his coaches, and it was a good experience because in my second year there, we acquired three brand new linemen. My first year there, I coached who they had. My second year, we got a new left tackle, Lomas Brown,
Yep.
who played for about 20 years.
Yep.
We got a new left guard, Glenn Parker, who played for the Chiefs. We got a new center, Dusty Ziegler, who was the starter for the Buffalo Bills. And then the other people were uh, Giants.
Yep.
But we
Ron,
recruit
Ron,
we
Ron Stone, right? Ron
Ron
Stone was
Stone,
from your
and
first
and
year.
and
He
and,
was still
and we
there.
I'm not sure if it was the first year, but I think it was the first year we drafted Pettigrew, who was
Yep.
a first round pick out of Notre Dame.
Yep. In '99, you had him at left guard. In
Yes,
2000, he was your right tackle.
that's correct.
Yep.
Yes, yes. And in 2000, we beat. I don't know if it was 2000. I think it was, but we beat the Eagles three times. We beat them two times and once in a playoff game. And that was and then when we beat the Vikings, man, the whole stadium crowded onto the field.
The conference championship, the 41-0.
Yes, yes,
41-0. Yeah, we all know
yeah.
about that conference. So, did you expect that game to go the way it went? I'm sure the offense prepares as it
Well,
does.
not really, because they had Randy, uh, the great receiver,
Randy
uh,
Moss and
Randy
Culpepper.
Moss, and
Culpepper was a quarterback.
they had a good offense, they had a good defense, and man, we just, I mean, they didn't score a touchdown.
Yep.
Yeah, we did not expect it. We
Yeah,
hoped it, but we did not expect it.
sure. So now, tell me during this time a little bit, how easy or how difficult is to say, hey, tackle, right tackle or left, I'm just going to go ahead and flip you, and now you have to play this position. Give me a little bit about the learning curve of moving people out of position, the detriments, and what are the pros because it clearly happens more than enough. Why do you think that is a thing?
Well, I think with Pettigrew, he was the left tackle at Notre Dame, so I don't think that was a strange move to him. But generally, now I can't say it's exact,
Sure.
but generally, they'll move a left tackle to right tackle if they feel they have a better pass protector coming in or who has been groomed and he's a better player, particularly on the pass at left tackle. So it's not a hard move to move the left tackle to the right tackle, but it's very unusual. I can't really tell you, and I'm sure there are, and you probably have stats. I really can't tell you a right tackle that's moved to left tackle because a right tackle usually has the tight end next to him, and teams like to run right. And, the quarterback's right handed. So when he drops back, he can't see over his left shoulder. So I do not know of many right tackles that have been moved to left tackle.
Sure. So now I don't know how much you keep up with current prospects. Do you still scout at all? I know you're still teaching O line. I know you're absolutely still teaching O line
I
and a little
still
bit of D
teach
line as well.
O line stuff, but
Sure.
I,
Are
I don't
you are
I
you at
don't
all
really
keeping up with
keep up.
prospects?
No, I
Sure.
don't. I don't know really much about any prospects.
Sure. So let's talk about a little bit about Evan Neal. You might not be too familiar with him. He's obviously all over the news just because of his struggles. First round pick out of Alabama last year, right? A top graded prospect across everyone's board. Big guy, I think 6'7", 350, huge guy. Played across Alabama's line, guard, left
What's
tackle.
his name?
Evan Neal.
Oh, Evan Neal. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I got you.
So right tackle for the Giants, struggling mightily, has all the traits, slow feet, slow hands, point of contact, has all the traits, can absolutely succeed, just doesn't seem to. So here's my question to you, coach. How much is it the prospect? How much is it the coaching?
A lot of times when you're on a real good team and you dominate, and you're a big, powerful guy, and you haven't been stressed in the pass pro area, you end up being a little overrated. Now, I don't know Evan Neal, and I didn't really even study him, but it's a surprise to me that if he was a first round pick, that he has failed that much.
Consensus overall first round pick, seventh pick last year of the
Yeah,
Giants, right? Top
yeah.
10 pick, consensus first round pick for everybody, struggling mightily. He has spot flashes, but consistency not happening. Speed kills him. Can't really move his feet. This is my opinion of just watching him, right? Struggles
No,
to move his feet.
I'm with you. Sometimes they put too much into size, and in the NFL, you got to be able to pass block, and that's probably it. I mean, he was maybe overrated as a run blocker because he could mash them, but in the NFL, when you got to block Boza and you got to block Miles Garrett and those kind of guys, uh, it might have been a mistake.
Sure. So, what can a coach do here? Because the offensive line coach for the Giants, Bobby Johnson, former Bill himself, right? Because even our head coach is coming from that area. He's taken a lot of heat because that's not the only offensive line prospect that's struggling, if you will. Maybe just the development isn't there. Again,
Yeah,
how much can the casual person just watching say it's him versus the coach? What are maybe some of the keys?
I
If
it the casual person that knows a little bit about football can tell if they can see the end zone copy, not the sideline, but they watch them from behind,
sure.
which you can get on NFL Plus. And if there's constant penetration and guys coming free, then there's an issue. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
definitely one can say, you know what, that seems to be a coaching issue right there. Just to an extent. I can't say how much, but to an
Yeah,
extent, there's got to be some coaching.
to an extent, if it happens over and over and over again. Now,
Sure.
if they're all young guys, then that's a reason. But if the right guard's a 4-year veteran, the center's a 5-year veteran, the left guard's a 3-year veteran, then they've got experience.
Sure.
If they're
So
lacking experience, it's a problem because they get nervous as hell.
sure. And the Giants line for the most part, minus I would say probably Glowinski, who's a pretty deep vet in the league who struggled mightily himself, but has picked it up of late. I would say it's a fairly young line. Their center is a rookie center from this season. Their left tackle's in his third or fourth year, but he was a top five, top three left tackle. So they've
Yeah,
got
he should be. He should be
Andrew
no.
Thomas is fine. He's just hurt. But as a coach, what would you do for a guy such as Evan Neal? He has all the traits, has all the tools, has succeeded, but is struggling at this level with whether it be speed, technique, whatever. What would you do coaching wise to say, all right,
Well,
what can I do for this kid?
I, I mean, I would either help him a little more on the pass pro with a tight end or a back chipping, and I would work like hell with him in the off season because during the season you have drills and so forth, but where you really improve a player is in the off season, the OTAs. I mean, you just go over it and over it and over it. But like the two best coaches in the NFL that coach the line coach for the Cleveland Browns. Their names are Bill Callahan and Scott Peters. Scott Peters is a martial arts guy who played football 8 or 9 years in the NFL and has learned scheme. Bill Callahan is an old heads coach, probably 30 years in the league, whatever. They know more than any other. So, as far as I'm not familiar with all the coaches now, but all the good ones that I knew are either deceased or retired.
Right
So
on.
all the young ones that I know may not be as good. They may not have had to pay the price of learning and going to clinics and researching. They may get a little stubborn and say, well, this is the way I'm going to do it. Who knows? But I don't know half of the line coaches in football now. I'm almost 80 years old. I mean, I don't think I could tell you, other than John Matsko, who's with the Commanders, I can't really tell you. I knew Johnson because he was with the Bills, but I never knew him. I didn't know his coaching style. But for some reason, he went with Dayball, right? Why would you leave Josh Allen? So, uh, you know, uh, I don't know. I'm not saying the Giants are poorly coached. I'm just in the line. I'm just saying that I'm not that familiar with the young guys, but I know that they have not really researched and had to work like the older guys.
Sure, fair enough. Now, here's a question about the pro pipeline from college. You know the older process more than I do. Guys are turning around between high school, college to the pros like that. I mean, they're 20, 21. Do you feel like these guys are being rushed way too quickly between college and the pros to even get ready? Do you feel like they're coming in way too early into the league?
Absolutely, and and it's the system's fault because the kid sees. I mean, they're paying them now in college, right? So like a decent high school player, all he cares about is his huddle and who's recruiting him and this, that, and the other, instead of really enjoying his high school and playing hard for his team. Now, I'm sure they play hard, but they're always looking for the next step because it's all money. It's money, 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 and they all are hungry for it. And it's the system. That's what screwed it up. It's the system, and it's the NFL, the amount of money that the TVs pay each team. And I mean, listen, on an NFL staff, not when I was coaching, but on an NFL staff, there's probably 3 or 4 coaches that make over $2 million. That's assistant coach. Head coach makes 6, 7 million. Okay, just a normal coach might make 800 grand. So, and look what the players make. There's a minimum salary. I don't know what it is, $300,000 or
It's a
something like
lot.
that.
It's a
It,
lot.
it's a lot,
Sure, all
and
the values is a lot.
that's all they're look. I mean, they'll play hard. I mean, they don't step on the field and not try to play, but the money has influenced them too much.
Sure. And now that money's involved in college too, right? You got the NILs now, which allows them to get something in college, whereas there was nothing in college
Yeah.
before. So now your time with the Giants, you had some very interesting names around you, right? You had Ron Dixon as a returner. You had a young Tiki Barber. My favorite linebacker of all time is Jesse Armstead. Jesse
Oh,
Armstead,
absolutely, absolutely.
love that guy. He's still with the organization. You had, Michael Strahan, Ike
We had
Hilliard.
Charlie, the running back, fullback, damn good. He's still on the. I think he's still on the staff as a player. Uh, you know,
Greg
communication.
Camilla? Well, is it
Well,
Camilla?
no, not Gene Camilla or Greg Camilla, but it was. Well, who was the who was the running back for the Giants in say uh, '98? Big guy,
Charles Way?
Charlie
Charles
Char,
Way?
Charles
Charles,
Way.
Charles Way.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, he was a powerful guy, and he worked his butt off.
I mean, he was a massive guy, right? He was like 6 foot 250, just
Yeah,
massive human being.
and he stayed on with the Giants as player personnel type guy. You know what I mean?
Or
Not player personnel, but community relations and stuff like that. But they had some great scouts there too.
yeah, absolutely. His wife is actually the current lieutenant governor and secretary of New Jersey.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Oh,
so he's done well for himself in all departments. But yeah, Charles was a big guy. So what were those years like under Wellington, and of course, 9/11 as well, right? You have all these little tidbits of your time there.
oh yeah, 9/11. See 9/11. We played Denver, and we played them the first night they opened the stadium in Denver. and we lost. So, we're Denver, was it 3 hours difference, and we probably get on the plane about 1 o'clock in the morning. So we get home at 8:15. Well, the plane parked right next to us when we pulled in to Newark. Was the plane that went to Pennsylvania that crashed because uh, the passengers got a hold of the pilot and put him down. Uh, but we didn't know that at that time. So we go to the office and we're really tired, but you always would go in for a little while and then go home early because you're so tired. We had to play Green Bay the next week. And then all of a sudden we put on the TVs because we all have TVs and we see the plane go through the first tower. Holy shit. I think that was about 8:30. And then we're watching, and then at about 8:45, same thing, plane number 2 through tower number 2. So immediately we go atop of Giant Stadium, and we can see the smoke from where we are. And so, I mean, how could we work on football? I mean, we went home, and I think the next day that I came in work, I would come from down Route 3 from Montclair. Cedar Grove is where I lived, and I could look to my right, as I remember, and I could see the Twin Towers, but I didn't see them then the next day. And so the game the next week was canceled. So the Green Bay game we played later, and that's when Brett Favre let Strahan sack him to get the sack record.
Is that how you feel about it? Wait, are we getting a here we
Oh,
go.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we're going on record, coach, to say Brett Favre let Strahan get the record on him.
Well, I would say Brett Favre knew that the pocket was broken down.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That maybe somebody else was coming through and he was going to get sacked. So I mean, I don't remember it exactly, but didn't he like take a knee?
He more or less just kind of it looked like, from what I recall, I believe it was a bootleg or a play action, either, right? He spins around. As soon as he spins around, Strahan's more or less in his face, and he just kind of slides down at that point.
Yeah, but I can't say for sure because I wouldn't do that to Michael Strahan because I can't. But it looked like Favre went down pretty easy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But anyway, after that, every weekend that we had a home or away game, when we would practice, even if it was a little earlier, we would invite the families of the firemen and the policemen over. And we had a whole bunch of people, in that bubble that we practiced in that would come every weekend. And we gave them out a bunch of footballs, and there were little kids and, wives and other firemen and policemen. And Bon Jovi brought his little league football team over. I never knew that he, whether he coached it or not, but I think he was the sponsor of it. But it was almost like he was with his kids. You know what I mean? Like he went to their games, or maybe he coached them. But and I gave him a football. Yeah. So yeah. The Giants with Wellington Mara, a great guy. I mean, a great guy. He'd come to every practice and he'd watch every drill and walk around. He wouldn't say much. If he had something to say, he'd speak very slowly and quietly. And
Was he
He was,
mostly hands off? I mean, he was there obviously, but was he hands off in the
yeah,
actual
he was.
operation
I mean,
side?
he might come and bring the head coach down and give him a lecture, but I never saw him go wacky on the field,
Sure.
And I didn't see Bob Tisch much. He came mostly to maybe one practice a week or the games. Uh, but John Mara obviously was always there, and Ernie Accorsi, and we had some good scouts. But you know, they took real good care of us. I mean, until somebody took advantage, they used to let you, if you had a nice shirt or a sport coat and pants and you wanted to get them cleaned, they would clean them for you at the same place where they would clean the jerseys, etc., and so forth. They would get you back in the day when they weren't feeding people, way back. We'd get free lunch every day. We'd sign up for what we wanted. And from that local Italian restaurant, I forget the name of it, right near the airport there in Teterboro. It's still probably a big Giants place. Was Italian restaurant. Uh, we'd get free food all the time, and they were really, really great to us.
Sure.
Uh,
Now, Coach, you have so much experience. What's one thing that you could express to the fan who's watching when you're watching O-line play? What should fans be looking for? What is the average fan? What should be looking for from your perception eyes that it either looks right or it doesn't look right, or some caveats? What should the fan be looking for? And the second part is, what's your advice to current players today that are in the league and coming from college when it comes to O-line play?
well, I would say the thing to look at the most is the protections, particularly when they have to throw. They throw all the time anyway, but I mean, second or third and long, or uh, watch how complicated the defensive rushes are, with line stunts, twisting, and you think this nickelback's coming, but he's dropping and somebody else is coming, is kind of pay attention uh, to that, because the other parts of the game where two guys are going to block these two, uh, maybe the defense wins or the offense wins, but watch how complicated and how much the quarterback gets hit, not because of line play, because somebody's coming free because they bring one more guy, or the quarterback thinks this guy's coming, but that guy's coming. You know, really kind of take note of the different style of rushing the passer.
And how
I
the O-line responds to it?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, the average fan would have no idea. I mean,
Sure,
he'd say, "Oh, so and so got beat," or how come the quarterback didn't come?" That's how complicated it is now.
sure.
Yeah,
Who is the most important person on the offensive line?
probably the center as far as making calls, changing calls. If the quarterback makes a call, the center might say, "No, no, no." Mike's 52, blah blah blah. Yeah, there's no question. The center. That's why
Uh,
they like that guy. But I think the quarterback's doing more nowadays because they can see, the center can see the safeties, whether they're moving. But to leave it all up to the lineman, a center, no, the quarterback's got to be the guy. I
Sure, of
mean,
course. Still has to run the offense and then pass the protections or slides to the center to
absolutely,
further on, regardless.
absolutely. Yeah, that is the key.
Yeah,
I mean, you watch every game. I mean, everybody's passing. Now, I can't say that the 49ers don't run the ball, but I mean, when you look at it, in the old days, teams would run the ball 40 times.
yep,
Now you're lucky if you can get up to 20, unless you're
absolutely.
ahead.
Sure. So now, from your time in the NFL, specifically for the Giants, though, what's your favorite memory? What's your favorite memory that you can recall as being in that building for 4 years?
Well, probably the favorite time, other than winning whatever game we won, would be when we won that championship game against the Vikings and knew we were going to the Super Bowl. Uh, Even though I'd been to two with the Bengals, uh, two teams later, I'm going to get the opportunity to go to the biggest game in football.
And then we met the buzzsaw. That was the
We went the
2000
buzzsaw,
Ravens.
and we could have gone the same day rather than go a week early and practice and
It would have been the
a
same thing.
nice hotel. We could have gone the same day and played and had just as much production.
Yeah, man, that was again. That's always probably the one in my mind that I
Yeah.
probably makes me the most upset because you know what? It didn't even feel competitive. I know guys are obviously out there
Oh,
trying.
it wasn't. It was
Yeah,
they kicked our ass. I
yeah.
mean, right from the get go, and it wasn't because our guys weren't ready to play. I mean, it was like I just really don't think they knew, other than we looked at film and all that stuff, that we knew how good they were. I mean, you couldn't budge them up the middle. They got Sam Adams at 370 pounds and Saragusa probably at 400. Here they are sitting over here, and they got a guy named McCray rushing like hell, and Ray Lewis, who you can't even catch, and they got a one defensive back that I think is one of the best cover guys ever. I think his name was McCreary, or McCreary was the defensive end. I'm sorry, uh, I forget the name of the corner, but he was great. Yeah, McAllister, I think, or anyway, whoever played one of those corners, and they had good backups too. Uh, and they had that big running back also. The, the
Oh
that
yeah,
was good.
Jamal Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis.
He was
Yeah,
a rookie. Great rookie season for him. Man, what a
yeah,
rookie season for him. Oh yeah, they had Peter Bulware.
yeah,
Oh man, they had McAllister. You're right. They had Rod Woodson. Duh, free safety. So yeah, that was quite a defense, man.
yeah. Absolutely.
And like you said, that's not even their backups. That's was just their starters.
Yeah, absolutely. And they
Yeah.
were like that every game. I mean, I don't mean they scored that many. Maybe they scored more. Maybe, but I don't know. Did they lose one game? I don't know how many games they lost. They didn't lose many.
That team was just a defensive juggernaut. I don't remember how many they won. It just seems like they were just stopping anything and everything. They were 12-4.
Yeah, yeah,
Points against, they allowed 10 points a game, first in the league. Like people
yeah,
just weren't scoring on them.
yeah.
Oh
It was their offense that was just kind of screwing it up.
man, yeah,
If they lost.
sure. So your favorite time was obviously that 41 nothing, which is again for fans is probably it's got to be one of the top things in Giants world is that
Well, of
game.
course,
A lot of
when
guys
the
have brought that
Giants,
up as their favorite.
well, when the Giants, yeah, when they played the Patriots twice, and then
Sure.
when Parcells won two, right
Yep.
there, one against the Bills, and I forget who the other one was against.
Parcells. It
Yes,
was the Broncos.
Broncos. Yeah,
Yep,
right.
yep. With that first half, it was man. Then the second half, they just go off and kind of end
Yeah,
that one.
right,
All right,
right.
Coach. I appreciate you so much for your time. It was. I mean, I could literally listen to you all night just because you have so much experience and so much knowledge. What are you up to these days where we can kind of see? Because again, I'm on you. I'm following
Well,
obviously following you
what
on
I
following you
what
on
I've
Twitter.
done what I've done recently for about 10 years, 2 years with the Saints and 2 years with the Jets, and 10 years with the Bengals, probably 14 years. I've been a consultant, done projects, gone to training camp, worked with players, and now basically what keeps me busy, uh, I have my Bengal iPad that they let me keep, which has got all my plays and techniques on there. And then I got the NFL, whatever. But a high school coach who I never knew says, "You ought to get on Twitter." I said, shit, I don't know nothing about Twitter. In fact, I think I joined it 6, 7 years ago or something, and I had like one follower, and
Sure.
I didn't even know what my handle was. And he says, no, you got, and I went, and they, Musk changed everybody's handle. At least he changed mine to Jim McNally 172 Toys. He says, no, you got to have something like hashtag Coach McNally. Blah. So anyway, I got on Twitter, and probably last March or February, and now I got almost 18,000 followers.
You're famous, man.
So I
You're
mean, I
famous,
put a
coach.
lot of little football things out for free, and then I do sell some videos through a thing called CoachTube that they can find on YouTube. But I don't I don't do those. I don't do the Twitter thing to make money. I just do it to put out stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I love the different insights. Um,
I
Giants
mean,
haven't called you. You're doing consulting. Giants don't even pick up the phone. No, nobody's reached out to you. They need to. Somebody needs to reach out to you.
yeah, you would think so, but I think everybody. I don't think. Now, I'm not saying that people don't know me, but I think that many people. Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. I don't think many people still realize that I've kept up with through all these years of being a consultant, that I've kept up with the local trends. You know,
Sure.
I'm not going to get on the phone with somebody and say, "Hey, will you hire me to do what?" I mean, the Bengals kept me for 10 years. They told me that I'm the only player they ever brought back. I'm not the only coach. Excuse me.
Yeah,
As
I need
far
to.
as you know, I left them. I mean,
Sure.
I left, and they brought me back.
Well, coach, you're still out there, doing amazing. Clearly, I mean, we're what 6 weeks out from your 80th birthday. You look great. You sound great. Clearly sharp as a whistle. What experience, man? We're talking about what 60 years, 50, 60 years of coaching
My first
experience.
year, if you count student assistant,
Absolutely, absolutely.
where it took my fifth year to graduate, they brought me in as a coach at Buffalo. That was 1965.
1965. So we're pushing 58, right? Almost 60 years of experience, and that's absolutely amazing. Congratulations on that. That's quite an accomplishment. And for what you're able to pivot to do, and even today, you're current. Social media is current. You're on Twitter doing your thing, which is a big deal for someone who probably
Yeah,
didn't even know where to
I'm
come
almost
from.
80. Most of the people that are my age are either deceased, retired years ago, and kind of just went on with their life. Didn't stay with football, uh, or are in a nursing home. Although the average lifespan is older than 80 now. I mean, I don't know what the average lifespan is. I mean, there are people 50 are dying, but what I'm saying is, I think people are living a little bit longer than they used to, and I work out every day, and yeah, I put some on Facebook. I did about 20 chins today. I usually do the wide grip ones, like the Marine Corps.
I see
But
the
today I
guns.
did
I
some
see you. I
tight
see you
grips.
reaching. I see the guns coming up as you reach.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Look
yeah,
at
yeah. You see
Coach
them
is
there right there?
jacked.
Yeah.
Coach is
So,
jacked.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, I can do. Yeah, and I usually do the rowing machine for maybe an hour every other day. I don't do a lot of weightlifting. I don't really know. I really have never done this, but I really don't know how big they are.
That's the gun show right there.
Yeah, right. So, but I got a lot of little bruises on me. You know what I mean?
Hey,
So,
listen, for pushing 80, you've got me beat in a lot of areas, and definitely got bigger guns than I do. But coach, it was a pleasure. I hope to have you on again, just because again, there's so much we can talk about, and I love all your stories. They're amazing. So I'm
Anytime.
definitely gonna keep in touch and bring you back on so we can talk. And hopefully I can get you some Evan Neal tapes. I can get your specific. I'd love your specific takes on his tape.
Well, I can get them because I can go to the Giants games.
Listen,
On
huge favor.
NFL Plus.
Do me a huge favor. Watch Evan Neal's tape and let's reconnect very soon. I want your experience to tell me what's happening here.
Yeah, but I don't want you to put it out there then.
No, this is between you and me. I just need to know. I just need to know your experience.
All right, I will.
All right, coach. Again, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody being here today. I mean, everyone's loving everything you said in the comments. I threw your Twitter handle out there.
Is this live or played
this
later?
Is live. No, this is live right now. So
how many we got listening?
I don't know. Jay
18.
is here. Coach is here. Darius is in the building. Bill, Chris, Mark. A fair amount of people who are again really appreciative of all your insight. Loved all the stories, and I threw out your Twitter handle in there too, so you'll get some new followers hopefully as well, and we'll keep base with you.
Okay, buddy. Thank you for.
Thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you, coach.
You too. Bye.
Bye.